In 2010, Canada made a decision. Quietly, almost casually. Ottawa announced it would buy 65 F-35 fighter jets from Lockheed Martin. No competition, no open bidding, just a direct purchase, framed as a straightforward modernization of an aging fleet. It was supposed to be simple, it was not. 14 years later, that decision has become a political and economic minefield. The projected cost has nearly doubled, from $19 billion to an estimated $33 billion Canadian. Auditor General reports have exposed gaping holes in the original estimates. Parliamentary committees have reopened the file not once, but twice. And the aircraft itself, the F-35 Lightning II, the most advanced fighter ever built, is now caught in a geopolitical storm no one saw coming. Because in 2025, something shifted. Donald Trump returned to the White House. Tariffs on Canadian goods were announced. The U.S. ambassador told the world, "We don't need Canada." And the president himself floated the idea, repeatedly, that Canada should become the 51st state. Suddenly, buying a $33 billion weapons system from the country, threatening your sovereignty, didn't feel like a routine procurement decision. It felt like a betrayal of national interest. Now, Canada is doing something unprecedented. It is formally reconsidering the F-35 contract. The Gripen E, built by Sweden's Saab, the jet that embarrassed NATO at Red Flag, that joined the alliance and flew combat missions within 24 hours, is back on the table. But here's the twist. Saab isn't just offering to sell Canada fighter jets, it's offering to let Canada build them. A full production line. 12,600 jobs. Complete technology transfer. Access to source code. And today we're diving into the most consequential defense decision Canada has faced since the Cold War. This isn't a story about stealth coatings or thrust-to-weight ratios. It's a story about sovereignty, about whether a middle power can afford to remain dependent on a partner that has proven repeatedly that partnership comes with conditions. And it's a story about a $33 billion question that Ottawa can no longer avoid. Do we buy the best jet in the world and accept that we will never truly own it? Or do we build our own and accept that we can never truly compete with it? Let's start with the F-35 itself. It is, by almost every objective measure, the most capable combat aircraft ever mass-produced. Stealth, sensor fusion, networked warfare, an unprecedented ability to see enemies before they see you, to share data across platforms, to operate as a node in a vast interconnected kill web. 27 countries fly it, over 1 million flight hours, 1,300 jets delivered. The program represents trillions in lifetime value and the institutional prestige of the Pentagon and Lockheed Martin. For Canada, the F-35 promised something else: seamless integration. NORAD, the Joint U.S.-Canada Air Defense Command, depends on interoperability. The Arctic, Canada's sovereign frontier, is patrolled in partnership with American assets. Every major exercise, every contingency plan, every operational assumption for the Royal Canadian Air Force has been built around the expectation of F-35s in the fleet. That was the promise. The reality, as it turned out, was more complicated. June 2025. The Auditor General of Canada releases a report that sends shockwaves through the defense establishment. The original projected cost, 19 billion Canadian. The updated estimate, $27.7 billion. The full life cycle cost, including infrastructure upgrades, weapons integration, sustainment, and long-term operating expenses, as high as $33 billion. A 75% increase, not due to inflation, not due to minor miscalculations due to exclusion. Critical expenses had been deliberately omitted from early estimates: base infrastructure, specialized training pipelines, decades of contractor logistics support, weapons compatibility testing. These weren't peripheral details. They were structural obligations that would bind future governments for the next 40 years. For a country with a defense budget already stretched across the second largest landmass on Earth, 3 coastlines, and NORAD commitments, the numbers forced a reckoning. Was the F-35 worth $33 billion, or was Canada paying a premium for capabilities it didn't actually need? Enter Saab. The Swedish defense firm had been here before. In 2021, it submitted the Gripen E for Canada's Future Fighter Capability Project. It scored 19.8 out of 60 points. The F-35 scored 57.1. On paper, the competition wasn't close, but that was 2021. By 2025, the context had changed. The Auditor General's report was public. The political relationship with Washington was fraying. And Saab came back to Ottawa with something no one expected: a full production line in Canada. Not final assembly, not kit assembly, full manufacturing capability. The proposal: 72 Gripen E fighters, assembled in Canada. 6 Global Eye airborne early warning and control aircraft, developed in partnership with Bombardier. 12,600 aerospace jobs, 9,000 directly tied to Gripen production, 3,600 tied to Global Eye. Full technology transfer, including access to source code. Domestic control over maintenance, upgrades, and future modifications. Export potential. Ukraine has already signed a letter of intent for 150 Gripens. France and Germany have expressed interest in Global Eye. This was not a competitor resubmitting a losing bid. This was a competitor fundamentally redefining the terms of competition. The question was no longer which jet is more capable. The question became, what is sovereignty worth? Here's where it gets complicated. The Gripen E is, in many respects, an extraordinary aircraft. It was designed for exactly the kind of mission Canada needs: territorial defense in vast, austere environments. It can operate from highway strips. It can be turned around by a small team of technicians in under 20 minutes. It costs $8,000 per flight hour to operate, compared to the F-35's $35,000, $47,000. It has proven itself in NATO exercises and real-world Baltic intercepts. But it is not stealth. It carries fewer weapons. Its radar, while advanced, is not comparable to the F-35's AN APG-81. Its sensor fusion, while sophisticated, does not approach the F-35's level of integration. And here's the paradox Saab doesn't advertise. The Gripen E's engine, the GE F414, is manufactured in the United States. Export licenses for that engine fall under American control. Washington could, in theory, block spares or impose conditions. Dependence in some form remains unavoidable. Critics seized on this. Former RCAF commanders warned that trading the F-35 stealth for the Gripen's efficiency was trading overmatch for adequacy. Major General Chris McKenna argued that operating mixed fleets would complicate logistics, training, and combat coordination. The leaked 2021 evaluation scores were cited repeatedly, but supporters raised a question that the performance charts couldn't answer. Superior relative to what adversary and what mission? Canada is not planning to penetrate integrated air defense systems over Beijing or Moscow. Its primary responsibilities are Arctic surveillance and sovereignty patrols, NORAD integrated air defense, NATO allied support operations, humanitarian assistance and disaster response. For these missions, does the F-35 stealth justify a $25 billion premium and permanent operational dependency? Or does the Gripen's efficiency, reliability, and sovereign control offer a more sustainable path? As the debate intensified, a compromise began to take shape. Saab proposed a hybrid solution. Canada would accept delivery of the first 16 F-35s as scheduled. These aircraft are already built. Pilots are training. Infrastructure is prepared. Canceling them outright would incur massive penalties and diplomatic fallout. The remaining 72 aircraft would be replaced with Gripen E variants, assembled and eventually manufactured in Canada. This approach sought to balance competing imperatives. Fulfill existing commitments to the F-35 program. Avoid direct confrontation with Washington. Build a sovereign aerospace industry. Reduce long-term dependency. Preserve interoperability through the initial 16 aircraft. The risks are obvious. Operating two fleets increases costs, complicates logistics, and fragments training. In a crisis, inconsistency could undermine operational effectiveness. But supporters argue that the hybrid model offers something neither pure option can: optionality. Canada would retain access to fifth-generation capability through the F-35 fleet. It would also develop independent sustainment and upgrade capacity through the Gripen program. Over time, as technology evolves and geopolitical conditions shift, the balance could be adjusted. This is not a clean solution. It is a messy, expensive, politically convenient compromise. But it may be the only path that allows Canada to escape the binary trap of all or nothing. Let's step back from the aircraft specifications and operating costs. Because this debate is not really about fighter jets. It's about what it means to be a sovereign nation in the 21st century. For 75 years, Canada's defense policy rested on an implicit bargain. The United States guarantees our security. We contribute where we can and trust that the partnership endures. That bargain assumed American reliability. It assumed that the guarantor would not become the threat. It assumed that alliance commitments were durable across administrations, across political cycles, across generations. Those assumptions are now in doubt, not because of one president, not because of one ambassador's radio interview, because the pattern has become unmistakable. Trade, tariffs imposed without consultation, framed as punishment for a 51st state that doesn't exist. Diplomacy. Allies dismissed as irrelevant, their sacrifices in Afghanistan publicly minimized. Technology, access to critical systems conditioned on political compliance, with no clear boundary between partnership and subordination. Rhetoric, a sitting U.S. president repeatedly suggesting that Canada's very existence depends on American generosity. Each of these individually might be survivable. Collectively, they constitute a structural rupture. And here's what the performance charts and cost estimates don't capture. Trust is not a line item. It doesn't appear in the Auditor General's report. It doesn't factor into Lockheed Martin's sustainment models. It can't be quantified in points out of 60. But it is the single most important variable in this entire equation. Because the F-35 is not a jet you buy. It is a jet you subscribe to. The software updates the cryptographic keys, the mission data files, the supply chain. All of it flows through Washington. Without continuous American cooperation, the F-35's capabilities degrade. Not through mechanical failure, through technological stagnation. Lockheed Martin and the Pentagon deny the existence of a kill switch. That denial is probably true. But it misses the point. You don't need a kill switch when you control the oxygen supply. So where does this leave Canada? Prime Minister Mark Carney has already committed to the first 16 F-35s. Those aircraft will arrive. They will be painted with maple leaf roundels. They will fly NORAD missions alongside American jets. But the remaining 72 aircraft, the vast majority of the fleet, are now unresolved. The hybrid proposal is being quietly negotiated. Parallel tracks remain open with both Lockheed Martin and Saab. Officials speak in careful language, avoiding commitments while preserving options. What happens next depends on three factors. First, the U.S. election cycle. Another transition could reset the political climate or deepen the instability. Canada cannot afford to bet its $33 billion fighter fleet on a single electoral outcome. Second, the European security environment. If Germany triggers cancellation clauses in its F-35 contract, as some opposition leaders have suggested, Canada will have political cover to follow. If the Gripen proves itself in Ukrainian service, the capability gap narrative will shift. Third, domestic industrial mobilization. Bombardier and its supply chain are preparing for the possibility of Gripen production. If the jobs argument solidifies, the economic case for sovereignty will become politically irresistible. My prediction? Canada will not fully cancel the F-35. The diplomatic and operational costs are too high. But it will not accept unconditional dependence either. The hybrid model, 16 F-35s, 72 Gripens, full technology transfer, domestic production, will emerge as the most viable path. Not because it is elegant, because it is the only option that acknowledges both alliance realities and sovereign necessities. It will be expensive, it will be complex, it will be criticized by purists on both sides. But it will give Canada something it has not had in decades: a choice. For 14 years, Canada's fighter procurement was framed as a technical debate: stealth versus efficiency, cost versus capability, fifth generation versus fourth generation. But the technical debate was always a proxy for something deeper. Who controls the tools of national defense? And what is that control worth? The F-35 represents the pinnacle of American aerospace engineering. It also represents the logical endpoint of alliance dependency, a system so integrated, so interdependent, that leaving it becomes nearly impossible. The Gripen represents something else. Not superiority in every metric, not the absolute cutting edge, but something rarer in the modern world. A door, an exit, an alternative, a path back towards sovereign capability deliberately preserved by a small neutral nation that never fully trusted the guarantees of great powers. Sweden spent 200 years perfecting that skepticism. It built a fighter jet that could defend its territory, operate independently, and still integrate with allies when needed. Now it is offering that same skepticism and that same capability to Canada. The $33 billion question is not whether the F-35 is better than the Gripen. The question is whether Canada can afford to remain dependent on a partner that has proven repeatedly that dependence is a vulnerability, and whether, after 75 years of trusting the American guarantee, Ottawa is ready to build something that looks a lot like insurance. What do you think? Should Canada go all in on the F-35, accept the costs and constraints, and bet on alliance reliability? Or should it choose sovereignty, build Gripens at home, and accept the capability trade-offs? Is the hybrid model a pragmatic compromise or an expensive fudge? Let me know in the comments. If you want to track these defense and geopolitical shifts before they become headlines, hit subscribe and ring the bell. We're watching the signals the rest of the world misses.